driver guides happen to be excellent for birding. I took over 4,000 photos with my Sony RX10. That's a bridge camera with a 600 millimeter zoom lens. And I selected hopefully the best to share with you. So we started in Tanzania, in the area circled there in the map, in the northeast portion of the country, and flew into Arusha, which is a major population center right near Mount Kilimanjaro. And then went from Arusha to Tarangire National Park, kind of at the bottom of the circle, and up to Ngorongoro Crater, and back past Lake Manyara National Park on the way back to Arusha. Now, Tarangire National Park was our first stop, and it was about a 2-hour drive from Arusha. We saw Maasai tribespeople along the way herding their goats and cows. And at the entrance to Tarangire, there's a baobab tree, which is also known as the Tree of Life. Turns out that Tarangire has the highest concentration of baobabs in Africa. So that was an interesting fact that I didn't expect. Also, Tarangire is generally considered to have the best year-round bird watching in Tanzania. One of the first birds we saw were the yellow-collared lovebirds seen here, or masked lovebirds. These are native to northeast Tanzania. Unfortunately, they're also used as pets. They're used as pets, usually in pairs since they mate for life. These are red-cheeked cordon bleu, also known as red-cheeked blue waxbills. These guys are about 5 inches in length. And on the male near the bottom, it's kind of partially obscured, you can see the red cheek. Unfortunately, these are also sold as pets. Now, ostriches are not sold as pets. This is a common ostrich. The male is distinguished by the black color and the pink neck, and they're typically 7 to 9 feet tall. And we saw a lot of ostriches on this trip. We also saw a lot of elephants. These are African bush elephants, and we saw lots of young in among the herds. And we also saw African forest elephants. They're smaller than their bush counterparts, but otherwise similar. And it wasn't this herd, but on day 2, we made a note in our bird guide. I can see elephants from my bed, which is a great way to start the day. This is a gray-crowned crane, the national bird of both Tanzania and Uganda. So it's on currency, tourist stuff, etc. They're about 3 feet tall with a face you can't forget. This is a white-backed vulture. It's the most common vulture in Africa, got about a 6 to 7 foot wingspan. The crowned lapwing or plover is found over large parts of Africa. This one, the crown is easily distinguished by its white halo. There are many other species of lapwings that we saw. This is a pair of yellow-throated sand grouse, the females in the back. They like grasslands and open savanna, and apparently feeding on insects in the dung you see in the picture on the left. This is a purple-banded sunbird. There are at least 40 species of sunbird in Tanzania. Now, they're sometimes compared to hummingbirds because they can hover to get nectar. This is a secretary bird, so named because male secretaries in the 1800s wore gray tailcoats and dark knee-length pants. They also use goose quill pens that they carry behind their ears, so you can see what people thought of as a resemblance. It's a bird of prey, but it spends most of its time on the ground. This obviously is a zebra. It's a common or Burchell's or plain zebra, and as the name implies, it's the most common zebra in the area. It's an African goshawk, probably a juvenile. It's about 16 inches tall. And a tawny eagle. It's one of 17 species of eagle in Tanzania. And you can't see it in this photo, but the legs are heavily feathered, so it's also known as a booted eagle. The blacksmith lapwing, or plover, is common in Africa. The lapwing's name's derived from its unique metallic alarming call, which supposedly sounds like a blacksmith's hammer ringing on an anvil. I can't attest to that, but that's what I read. Obviously, we saw lots of lions, and also this male was just coming off of mating. We saw lots of mating too. Mating can last for over a week, with mating happening every 20 minutes or so at the peak. Now that can be painful for the female in general, but we saw several females turn around and attack the male as things concluded. The African gray woodpecker, it's about 8 inches tall, typical woodpecker. And Darnode's barbet. This pair was right alongside of the road, which was almost too close to get a good photo because of the angle. You can't get out of your vehicle, and so I had to kind of stretch out and reach down to get this shot. This is a white-bellied go-away bird. It's a fruit eater, and its name comes from its calls described like "go away." It's about 20 inches tall, so a fairly large bird. The silverbird is named for obvious reasons. It's a flycatcher. And the saddle-billed stork. At 59 inches, it's the tallest stork in the world. On the upper side of the beak is a yellow saddle, which gives it its name. This is a little bee eater, one of 13 species of bee eater in Tanzania. Photos often show them eating a bee. I got a couple of those too, but preferred this shot for showing off the color and almost the ferocity of the bird as it looks at you. This vervet monkey, we were at a lunch stop where you are allowed out of your vehicles. But one other vehicle was at that lunch stop, and they left their pop top on their vehicle open. The monkey got in, helped himself to lunch, and didn't do any damage other than that, I don't think. This is a superb starling. I first saw this bird on our way into Tarangire, and I asked our guide to stop. He laughed and said, "Wait until our first picnic lunch." Sure enough, there were several there, and he just called it a picnic bird because you always see them at lunch stops. Very common. The Kori bustard is one of the world's heaviest flying birds, but spend most of their time on the ground. It only flies when there's significant danger. There are 5 other species of bustards in Tanzania that are similar but smaller. The brown snake eagle, another of the eagles in Tanzania, named because it's adept at catching snakes, but it also eats lizards and other small reptiles. This is a spotted mourning thrush, also known as a spotted palm thrush. And I found that despite the name, it's grouped in with flycatchers and not thrushes. This is a female leopard. We know that because in other shots I have, and we saw when we were there, was that both back legs were straddling that branch, and a male just wouldn't do that. Speckled mousebird is the largest of the mousebirds. There are, I think, 3 or 4 other species of mousebird. The speckled mousebirds have reversible outer toe, mousebirds in general, have reversible outer toes, which gives them the versatility to hang upside down and climb tree trunks, and apparently scamper along a tree branch or on the ground like a mouse. The gray-headed kingfisher is a dry country kingfisher of scrub and woodland, often found near water, but unlike most kingfishers, it's not aquatic. It eats insects and small lizards. There's an African hoopoe, named for its call, which is hoopoo. The distinctive crest opens up like a fan on the top of its head. Opens up like a fan if the bird's alarmed. This is a martial eagle, the largest eagle in Africa with a wingspan of over 6 feet. They are under a threat of extinction. One threat to them is that the farmers readily shoot martial eagles as they swoop down and kill their livestock. Apparently, the martial eagles particularly like newborn cows. A woolly-necked stork, probably a juvenile because the white neck feathers are just starting to emerge, and an adult's neck is fully white. There are some open-billed storks in the background there, so named because their bill doesn't quite close all the way. The lilac-breasted roller is beautiful, but quite common. The first dozen or so times you see one are spectacular, and then it's just another lilac-breasted roller. They're particularly spectacular in flight. This is a long-tailed fiscal. It's a member of the shrike family, and of course has a long graduated tail. The southern ground hornbill is the largest of the hornbills, and there are a number of species throughout Africa. This one's about the size of a turkey. They have been known to live up to 70 years in captivity, making them one of the longest lived bird species. Now, we just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And you can see here that what's happening is that ground hornbills are known to raid the nests of other birds. There's 2 lapwings on either side towards the upper part of the picture. And what we could ascertain is that the hornbill had stolen one of the lapwing's chicks. The jackal saw that, black-backed jackal there saw that and wanted it. But what happened was a tawny eagle kept attacking the hornbill, dive bombing and attacking until the hornbill dropped the lapwing chick and the eagle grabbed it and flew off. This is a yellow-necked spurfowl, also known as a yellow-necked francolin. They like to forage in the dirt, in the elephant dung for insects, and they're about 16 inches tall. Speaking of tall, here's the Maasai giraffe, which is the most prevalent giraffe species in Tanzania, and also happens to be the world's tallest land animal at 17 feet. Helmeted guinea fowl, it's easily identified. They're perfectly capable of flying, but most choose not to. They actually prefer to walk everywhere. And from what I read, it's possible for them to walk up to 6 miles a day. It's a magpie shrike, also known as an African long-tailed shrike. Cut off part of the tail in this photo, but you can see why the common name is there. Now we went from Tarangire National Park on to Ngorongoro Conservation Area, and about a 2-hour drive, I think. This is the world's largest volcanic caldera or crater, and covering about 100 square miles. It has year-round water, which makes it a haven for wildlife. As you can see in this shot, the The other side of the crater is about 20 miles away, but it makes for a natural enclosure with a population of over 25,000 large animals and over 500 species of birds. One of those is a bagel-effect weaver. There are over 40 species of weavers in Tanzania. This is one of the more colorful ones. The origin of the word bagel-effect is something of a mystery. It's probably from a local name in Abyssinian language. The African black-shouldered kite. It's a common bird of prey, and this one might be a juvenile since the eyes turn dark red in adult, and I don't think these are quite there yet. The auger buzzard. It's a fairly large bird of prey at about 24 inches. This is a rufous nape lark. It's a widespread and conspicuous species of lark in the lightly wooded grasslands and open savannas. Sooty chat. This is a female. The males are black with white patches. Sometimes chat are called chat thrushes and are classified with thrushes and robins. The Pangani longclaw. There's a town in northeastern Tanzania named Pangani, and a river as well. The origin of the rest of the name is pretty obvious. Now, some of the large animals in Ngorongoro migrate to other areas. The lions do not, so they have a lot of inbreeding going on. Maybe it makes them a little crazy because, speaking of breeding, that was the same male lion. He got a little crazy after mating. He had gone over to a tree and was using it as a scratching post, and then came over to see all the people watching him, and gave the people in that vehicle quite a shock. I have video of them moving very quickly from the side of the vehicle with the lion on it to the other side, as far away as they can get. Typically, lions are going to ignore the vehicle, but not this time. And this, you can see there's about 5 or 6 vehicles here watching these lions mate. That's the traffic jam in Ngorongoro. If there's something like a lion happening, everybody shows up in the same place. This is a great white pelican. There apparently was a rare bird sighting of a great white pelican in Florida recently. The American white pelican is smaller, so is easily distinguished. The hippos in the background formed a large raft of over 100 individuals. And among them was this little guy who posed nicely for a shot. This is a red-capped lark, another of the 17 or so species of larks in Tanzania. And a Hildebrandt's francolin. Francolins are terrestrial birds, but not flightless. And Hildebrandt also named the starling, which we saw. And it was on from the crater, the Ngorongoro crater, to Lake Manyara National Park. This was not originally on our itinerary, but we had a last day pretty much free, and our guide kept saying it was the first place birders want to go in Tanzania. So we made some changes and did a lot of last-minute arranging and spent a day there. Well worth it, too. We initially saw a silvery-cheeked hornbill. This hornbill, the beaks, looks like the bill should be very, very heavy, but the beaks are comprised of a honeycomb bone with a thin layer of overlaying keratin. And so that makes the beaks, the bills quite lightweight. This is a hammerkop. You may be used to seeing this with the neck a little bit extended, and hammerkop is the Afrikaans word for hammerhead, which it looks like when it extends its neck a little bit. There's a wading bird, which actually builds the largest nest of any bird in Africa. It's about 4 to 8 feet in diameter and might comprise 10,000 sticks. We saw a number of these and they're quite impressive. This little guy is a blue monkey. Blue monkeys don't always have bluish fur. It can be olive or gray. The name actually comes from the bluish hue in its face. The black-winged stilt, widely distributed, and some people even consider the black-necked stilt found in the U.S. to be part of this species, but I think most people consider them to be different species. Wood sandpiper, this is a migratory species moving south from northern Europe and Asia after breeding to Africa and South Asia. And as you can see from the past few slides, the Manyara has a lot of water, and there's a huge lake there, but this was a marsh not far from the lake, and we also saw a Hottentot teal there. It's one of the smallest ducks, as well as one of the smallest species of all waterfowl, and it's got extremely wide range throughout Africa. The squawko heron, it breeds in southern Europe and the Middle East and migrates to Africa for the winter. And in flight, as you're looking up, these birds look completely white. So the underside of their wings is white. Long-toed lapwing. They use their long toes to walk on floating vegetation and mud to search for aquatic insects. The crested guinea fowl. This chicken-sized bird is not usually found in this part of Tanzania, so we were lucky to see it. Our guide got quite excited when it was just sort of standing by the side of the road. This is an olive baboon, endemic to equatorial Africa. The young stay dependent on their mother for at least 8 months and ride either on their mother's back or underneath. And from here, it was back to Arusha and then on to Uganda. We flew into Entebbe and right on Lake Victoria, and then flew over, covered kind of the area circled, flew over to Fort Portal and Kabale National Park in a small aircraft, drove down through all the way through Queen Elizabeth National Park, down to Bwindi and Penetracle National Park, and then back to Entebbe eventually. Now, Uganda is home to over 1,000 species of birds, but as I said, our primary focus in Uganda was primates. This was one of them, the black and white colobus. This monkey weighs up to 30 pounds, and the name colobus is derived from the Greek word for mutilated, because unlike other monkeys, the colobus monkeys do not have thumbs. Another of the mouse bird species, the blue-naped mouse bird. This 14-inch bird is quite social and is often found in flocks of 20 or more. I think in this shot, I cut off the restrum. That tree was just full of mouse birds. The woodland kingfisher, although it is a kingfisher, it prefers drier habitats in more traditional woodland and can be far from water. Unlike most kingfishers, woodland kingfishers rarely dive for fish. This is an eastern gray plantain eater. Species feeds on fruit, especially figs, and other vegetable matter, but not necessarily plantains. This is the brown-crowned tragra. It's in the same family as a bush shrike. And this is all in around our lodge at in the Fort Portal area, as was this black and white cast hornbill, also known as the gray cheeked hornbill. You see a little bit of the gray cheek there. Their diet consists mainly of figs, fruits, insects, and small animals found in the trees. This is a long-crested eagle. It's an aptly named smallish eagle. It's impossible to confuse with anything else. Now back to our primate focus, we went to Kibale National Park. And that's where there are several habituated chimpanzee troops. Habituated as in accustomed to people, but not tame. So you go out in a small group with a ranger or guide and try to track the chimps through the forest. We went twice, but only saw chimps on one of those treks. And not a long view either, but we did get this guy posing nicely. And we saw quite a large family troop, but just very quickly. Also in the area, the yellow-billed barbet. They typically nest in tree cavities, as this one's doing. We saw this one going in and out several times. I'm not quite sure what it's doing, whether it's building out a nest in there or feeding young, but he kept going in and out. This is a red-tailed monkey, also known as the black-cheeked white-nosed monkey. The long tail, I cut it off in this shot, but it does get reddish as it goes down. They have elastic cheeks and can store almost as much food in their cheeks as their stomachs can hold. Now moved into Queen Elizabeth National Park, and we're on the water in the Kazinga Channel, which is a 20-mile long natural connection between Lake Edward and Lake George. This is a Hadada ibis, the most common ibis in Africa. They have a distinctively loud, penetrating, and recognizable call. They're very noisy, especially early in the morning. This is a sacred ibis. This ibis was revered by ancient Egyptians, hence the name. They mummified many of these birds and buried them in the tombs of deceased pharaohs. The Nile crocodile typically grow at about 16 feet long and weigh 500 pounds. They will eat anything that moves, including people, and there are about 200 deaths by Nile crocodile each year. The open mouth in this shot is to keep the crocodile from overheating. In fact, there were birds quite close by, but it wasn't hungry, just trying to cool off. The African jacana appears to walk on water, but uses its long toes to spread out its weight and moves from lily pad to lily pad. Not in this shot, but it does have an alternate common name of lily trotter. The pied kingfisher. It's the largest hovering bird and the only kingfisher to hover. We saw that, they would hover over the water and all of a sudden dive down when they saw something they wanted. As you can see here, they nest in cavities and banks. The African spoonbill. They are quite widely distributed in sub-Saharan Africa. Spoonbills are found throughout the world, including, of course, the roseate spoonbill here in the US. A black-tailed godwit has a breeding range from Iceland all the way to Siberia, but winters in, among other places, Africa. The three-banded plover gets its name from the two black bands on its chest separated by the third white band. It's a resident in much of Eastern and Southern Africa. Again, still on the water in the channel. The African fish eagle. They're abundant around any body of water. They're usually seen perching in trees, often in pairs. And this is the only shot I have of one on the ground. This is another one that's quite spectacular when you first see it. And it's so common that after a while, it's just another African fish eagle. Now, the Malachite kingfisher. It's a small 5-inch river kingfisher. This species is associated with waterside reeds, which provided a perch from which to hunt, as you can see here. Yellow-billed stork. This species has an unusual and specialized bill and feeding techniques using tactile feeding behavior. They have one of the fastest swallowing reflexes known, enabling to catch moving prey in the water very quickly. Hippos, again, another little one. They spend most, but not all of their time in the water, as you can see here, because it's difficult for them to support their weight on land. They're the most dangerous animal in Queen Elizabeth National Park, where this picture was taken, and kill more people than crocodiles even. This is a red-throated bee eater. It's found throughout Central Africa, and it's a typical bee eater. Usually you see it with a bee in its beak, bill. The marabou stork, not a pretty sight, but it feeds on carcasses and scraps of dead animals. It often gathers around carcasses with vultures and hyenas, and you can see the head is featherless like vultures, so to keep it clean when they're feeding. Also have some cormorants and egrets and a few other birds in the background there. This is Ruppel's vulture. I happened to catch this near the ground, but these birds can soar to incredible heights searching for carrion, and they hold the record for flying higher than any other bird. I read that an aircraft has collided with one of them at 37,000 feet, and they can even fly higher than that. The African wattled lapwing is the largest lapwing. They're conspicuous and pretty unmistakable. Yellow-throated longclaw are typically found in savannas, where their long claws are thought to help with walking on dry grasses. Well, this one happens to be in an acacia shrub. You can see the large thorns. White-throated bee eater. This one is a shot with a bee in its bill. This bird is also on acacia. Now, warthogs are generally very shy and tend to run away from people. This is actually at our lodge, and this mother and young were just outside our room, so I could kind of peek out the window and take a picture without disturbing them. African thrush is a true thrush. It looks kind of familiar to me, like one of our robins. Now, when we left Queen Elizabeth National Park and drove down towards Windy Impenetrable National Park, we stayed in the small village of Bahoma, which is just outside the national park. And we hired a bird guide for the afternoon. So we had just a couple hours walking through town and then into the national park. And we saw over 40 species in that short walk. This is a McKinnon shrike. It is thought to have benefited from deforestation as it thrives on secondary growth, and it's often found in farmland, villages, and gardens, as we saw. Golden-breasted bunting generally feeds on seeds, insects, and spiders. This shot kind of goes against my approach not photograph birds on wires or other man-made things, but I like this shot, so here it is. The yellow-fronted canary. It's native to Africa. It's called the green singing finch. And it's been introduced to the US, primarily in Hawaii and Puerto Rico. The African wood owl. It's the most common owl in the woodlands and forests throughout sub-Saharan Africa, but is one of those species of birds that are incredibly good at camouflaging and therefore are extremely efficient in hiding from predators and prey and people, especially in the daytime when they're mostly inactive. Now, our bird guide saw this. Took him about 5 minutes to get me to see it. It was way up in a tree and mostly hidden. This is an African green pigeon. They frequently hang upside down, almost like parrots. They favor these maneuvers to get close to juicy juicy ripe fruit, especially figs. This is the African yellow white-eye. The name kind of says it all. And now it's on to Bwindi Impenetrable National Park. There are 346 species of birds in the national park, but we weren't there to see them. We were there to see the endangered mountain gorillas. Bwindi is home to over half of the world's mountain gorilla population. That's only 600 individuals. The good news is that their population is increasing. There are 11 habituated families of about 10 to 24 members each, and the rest in the national park are not habituated to people. Visitors can go out with a ranger in groups of about 8 for a 1-hour visit with a family. The habituation benefits everyone, with the influx of cash from expensive trekking permits going to protect the gorillas and their habitat. And also, the gorillas get tracked all day to protect them from poachers, and so that visitors can head directly to where the gorillas are. Even with that, it can be over 4 hours of trekking in rough mountainous terrain. We were lucky, and we had 2 visits, which only had short treks. This is possibly a female, but I think it's more likely a young male called a blackback. The males start to become silverbacks after age 12. Young males weigh about 250 pounds, the same as females, while a silverback can weigh over 400 pounds. We are quite close to this gorilla. The rule is to stay at least 20 feet away from the gorillas, but nobody tells the gorillas that. They will wander right by you and even touch you as they move along to feed, but there was never any danger. This is the silverback, probably the dominant one in this family. However, there can be more than one silverback in a family. Only one is the alpha. They protect the family and lead the family for finding food, where to rest, and when to sleep. They also take care of the young and play with them, even if they're not the biological father. So this is not an aggressive alpha male. This is more of a nice leader. And after feeding, this little group of a female and 3 young settle down for a rest. And the highlight of this trip for me was when I was standing by myself in a clearing as the family was moving along to feed. I heard a noise behind me and saw a young gorilla, about the size of these here in the picture, looking towards the rest of the family as it was moving away. He decided to catch up, and while there was plenty of room for him to go around me, he ran straight at me, bumped into me, and ran off. I think he was playing. Now, I have lots more photos of gorillas, but one of the things that's really hard to do is put your camera down and just look, because it's just amazing to be so close and to one of our closest cousins. And it was truly spectacular and highlight of the trip for me. Back at the lodge, I noticed these 2 snowy crowned robin chats facing off. I say facing off because the next slide shows what happened right after that. It was all over very quickly. I don't know what the fight was about, but we had a clear winner. Also back at the lodge, and actually viewed from our room, was this green-headed sunbird. It's one of the 10 sunbird species in just that small area. Here's the 3rd species of mousebird that I've shown you. This is the speckled mousebird. It's the largest species of mousebird and one of the most common. Another sunbird just outside a room. This is the northern double-collared sunbird. As you can see by the pollen on its bill, it has been feeding on the nectar in the flower that it's sitting on. The African pied wagtail. I tried to find out why wagtails wag. The best speculation I could find is that they do it to flush food out of the grass. And since wagtails wag at other times, I don't think that's the complete story. This is a bronze sunbird, another one viewed from our room. They've got a thin, well-curved bill and a longer tail than other sunbirds and that we saw, and that made for easy identification. So we left the windy area and took a small plane back to Entebbe, but our trip wasn't quite over. Got a picture of this potus monkey back in Entebbe, outside of Entebbe actually. They're the fastest primate and can run at speeds of up to 34 miles an hour. This is a great blue Turako. It's the largest Turako and most widely distributed with a broad range in West and Central Africa. Now, one of the things that birding trips to Uganda do is focus on the shoebill. This is a shoebill. It's once thought to be a member of the stork family. The shoebill is now thought to be more closely related to pelicans. It derives its name from its enormous shoe-shaped bill. And one of the hot spots for this difficult-to-find bird is Mambamba Swamp, which is just west of Entebbe. Since we had an afternoon free before we left Africa at the end of the trip, we considered a trip to the swamp, although there was no guarantee of seeing a shoebill. There are only about 1,000 shoebills in Uganda. Instead, our expedition leader suggested a trip to the Entebbe Wildlife Rehabilitation Center and a behind-the-scenes tour. That's where this shoebill was, and we were able to enter its enclosure. It turns out that this shoebill will allow you to approach if you mimic its movements and sounds. I don't know how they figured this out, but so if it bobs its head or shuffles its feet, that's what you do. And then after a few minutes of one person kind of standing there with his mimicry, you can carefully approach it. And I say carefully because those bills are very powerful. They even eat young crocodiles for one of their meals. But you can even get close enough to pet, as my wife is doing. So here we have bird viewing with no binoculars needed. After a misconnection due to flight delays and an extra day in Nairobi, we finally headed home. And that was the end of our trip.